Hey everyone. Okay, so a lot to talk about, but I guess the place to start is that ending where the Iron Giant not only fully awakened, but it also spoke, preparing to fight against the government while looking like an absolute demon. And yeah, if the little bits and moments in the opening weren't enough of a dead giveaway, this thing shares a connection with Joy Boy, the Nika before Luffy. Now, the question still kind of lingers of how of like what is it about Joy Boy that caused him to awaken him? Did Joy Boy like awaken program it to awaken when he sensed his successor, or is this thing a living machine that just reawakens every time it reawakens to Nika almost on instinct or something? But regardless of which it is, the big boy is definitely powered by more than just gears and cogs. But for now, it is about it. For now, we should just enjoy it. Enjoy that it's about to wreck shop and wreak havoc on the government right now. And the only ones in this particular case, the only ones I feel genuine sympathy for at this point are the Marines' foot soldiers on the ground on the island. Like their soul, like these are guys who are these are the kind of people who are not just the kinds of soldiers who are not prepared for this kind of shit. They're not physically or mentally like fit to deal with all this craziness. And you know the one thing they're thinking of this entire time is I want to go home. I'm not prepared for this bullshit. I want to leave now. Like you can just tell that that's what's going through every single like foot soldier's like head while watching this episode. Uh, and but circling back to the giant itself, though, one thing that I think is becoming more and more apparent as things continue to escalate is that it feels like we're getting a taste or a glimpse into what might have happened during the Void Century. Like, you got all the Elders and their demon forms on there. You got Luffy as the Nika. You got the giant robot that had awoken due to his presence. Like, and I think technically you also got, like, at least from the way that the Elders, like, at least if we take the Elders' passing comments about it at face value, you also got the Giants there as well. Like all the players on this board are connected in some way to what happened during the lost period of history. The only thing that's missing is the genuine details of the event itself. Pretty much, like you almost have a perfect setup for for a recreation of probably what the battle looked like, maybe, or at least a miniature version of that battle. In saying that, I like how amongst all the chaos in this episode, it still gave us a nice little character moment for Lucci, where after telling Marcus Mars where York is, as well as sharing all the intel we gathered from this mission, we see him basically prostrate himself before Mars, asking to spare Kaku's life. And it's an interesting scene for two reasons. One is that being Vijay's Zero, I'd wager Lucci is more personally familiar with the Elder's lack of empathy, shall we say, and knew the moment he shared that intel, everyone would get killed indiscriminately. So he had to beg for Kaku's life. But just the fact that Lucci did that at all shows he has grown. While he's still loyal to the government, he's found room in his heart to actually form connections with people. It's a very small, subtle change, but it's noticeable. Even when going back to the very early parts of this arc with Stussie's betrayal, you see that Lucy did kind of take that a lot more personally than he usually would have if this was like Lucci pre-time skip. So like, yeah, Lucci. Well, Lucci's still a government dog through and through. You can tell he has learned enough. He learned enough from Luffy's fight in order to kind of open his heart a little bit, have more, learn to have more fun, I guess, and just generally kind of, and generally kind of open him, just generally like let himself become more human, I guess you could say. With that said, yeah, the entire back half of this arc before the giant appears is straight up Looney Tunes, as it's Luffy just going absolutely buck wild against the Elders, like forming a fucking bat out of a tree, and pulling a batter's helmet out of thin air to like bat away the fucking, in order to bat away like Saturn's like poison balls or whatever, like poison globs, like they were baseballs, and like I I was loving every single minute of it, and as like and as many have brought up before, the idea of Year 5 Nika is genuinely amazing because it allows the series to kind of really tap back into those, I think, zany fun roots of the pre-time skip, while simultaneously still managing to build upon the history of the world through the form itself, and how the series managed to even balance this is beyond belief to me, at how none of this feels distracting. I think part of that is basically just the parallels and the is just parallels you can make between how it is kind of a darkness and light thing, with the elders representing the darkness, whereas Luffy as Nika, he represents the light. So it's like it's a perfect balance in that regard, and still managing to just show how dangerous the elders themselves still are despite all the goofy antics. And it is funny seeing Luffy call them immortal, knowing what we all know from the manga, that while that's technically true, there's a weird catch just what that immortality is. It's kind of one of those weird things where there's a narrative purpose for the immortality. One thing that was also kind of interesting and a bit of a and I guess a bit of a precursor for the next arc is how Walkie early in the episode described the Giants being here and teaming up with Luffy as an unpleasant combination. And again, that is the understatement of the millennium, given what's going on in the manga right now, what we've learned and whatnot about Olaf. Having said all that, I do want to take a moment to talk art and animation for a minute, because, like I said before, the entire back half of this episode was straight Looney Tunes, and the art and animation team took full advantage of that to be colorful and wacky as possible, and it shows. Where the episode did feel like it kind of cheaped out a little bit is Marcus's Mars's bird form. Like, the CGI they're using for his giant form in this episode definitely stuck out a lot more than most other times, I think, that I've seen it. And it's mostly whenever it's in motion, and it's one of those things where most of the time it happens when it's in motion. Like, every time Marcus Mars has to move, it becomes a giant sore spot that sticks out on an otherwise amazing episode. And the thing is, I'm not even saying this in context that I think it's terrible CGI. It's just that Marcus Mars in his bird form right now feels like a puppet at times, where you can clearly see the strings. That's, I think, the best way I can describe it, is that the CGI looks very much like a puppet, and the strings are very transparent and clear as day. That's the best way I can describe it. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. I'm on Blue Sky and with Crunchyroll. Be sure to push the bell, subscribe button, and just shit around, guys. Dark Knight signing off. Later, everyone.